Hey guys, welcome back. So once again, thank you so much for the love that I've been getting for my videos in the past couple of weeks. It's honestly been great getting back into the groove of producing these videos, of creating art for people, helping people out with potentially a little bit of good advice. And I'm gonna try my best to keep this up. I like to do this on a weekly basis, but we'll see how far I'll get. Tomorrow actually is the start of the new school year, so I'm gonna have a bunch of new students to teach, which honestly I'm very much looking forward to. It's always fun to discover these new aspiring artists and see what they can come up with and what they will produce. But depending on how much work they give me, of course, it might be a bit tricky to keep up the schedule that I have in mind for these videos. But for now, you can expect a weekly video. I'm gonna do my best to keep that up, and I'm just having fun with these, which is actually one of the main topics of the day: fun. So this illustration I'm making right now was for a challenge by Hardy Fowler. Most people that are active on the art education scene on YouTube probably know about Hardy Fowler. He's a concept artist, has a YouTube channel on YouTube here, and he honestly has just wonderful, calming, soothing, interesting videos to watch. And it also hosts a monthly challenge, and this creature that I'm designing is for that fantasy creature themed monthly challenge. Now, I had a bit of struggle with coming up with an idea to create something that I found interesting and fun to work on and submit it to the assignment, because I was thinking, whenever I'm unsure as to what to make, I can always do a dragon. But dragon, has been done quite a few times. I still think there's plenty of fun ways to do dragon, and I might still do one in the future, because it is sort of a little bit of my comfort zone. But I've been doing characters for a while now, and I really didn't feel so comfortable anymore with just painting, which was kind of the main issue. And because I personally am of the opinion that, when you are trying to learn and you're trying to understand how to paint, how to work on things, how to improve things, experimentation with painting processes and workflows is really important. So as for this image, the earlier attempts before what you're seeing right now, I was actually trying all kinds of different painting methods, being very loose as opposed to the more clean, rigid workflow that I had in the past couple of months, and create something that I hoped I would have fun with, but actually I didn't. I really wasn't enjoying the process that much, and don't get me wrong, I'm still a huge fan of experimenting and trying new things, but I do think it's important to keep in mind when you're in these situations that the things that you're producing maybe aren't turning out the way you want them to turn out, aren't going in the direction that you want them to go. Maybe that's not the time to see if you can test your boundaries. Maybe that's actually the time to go back to something that you find more interesting, that you can do a bit more comfortably, more confidently. Because as an artist, it's so difficult managing our own emotional state, our own satisfaction with our work. It goes up and down. There's a whole theory behind that, which if you guys are interested in that, I might bring up in a video as well. But these times when you are struggling with the things you're making, it's not the time to experiment. It's probably better if you then go back to something you know pretty well, you feel pretty comfortable with. So I kind of went for middle ground. Instead of using the same workflow I did for characters, for example, which I perfectly as well could have done, I went back to a workflow that I used quite a lot actually about a year ago, which is this kind of painting process where I'll go for a very vibrant, saturated underpainting, and basically with only one or two layers kind of paint just over top. Nothing too complicated, not too many blending modes or no blending modes really. Just an underpaint layer and kind of painting over my mistakes rather than erasing them or undoing them. And this was a workflow I felt so comfortable with in the past, and I felt so it was just so much fun revisiting this for this piece in particular. I wasn't really worried about the end result, which helped immensely as well, because I think if you're too tunnel visioned about what it's supposed to end up looking like, you kind of forget to enjoy the process along the way. So I was just kind of going through the groove, creating this image at my own pace, having fun with this, sometimes maybe getting lost in the subtleties of the color, because I do like to mess around with color, you know. And that really helped me personally relax, and you know, this was just a really, really fun illustration in the end to work with, which I'm very happy about, that I managed to turn that around. So that's, in my opinion, an important lesson to learn when you're an artist. It's when to push your boundaries and when to go back to something more familiar. But going back to something more familiar doesn't have to mean doing the same thing you've been doing. Because in this case, it might be a workflow that I have done quite a lot in the past, but I hadn't used this workflow in a couple of months really, which meant it still felt nice and fresh to me. So I suppose my advice would be kind of cycle in between things. Don't do the same thing for years on end. Go from one thing you find interesting to learning a new thing, developing a skill in that new thing, so that you have multiple ways of working, multiple workflows, multiple styles perhaps even, to kind of cycle between. Just again, variation is so important with just keeping yourself interested in improving. It's not perfecting one way, one style. Perfection is not what we're aiming for. It is actually just expanding our knowledge, right? Expanding our library of like our visual library, expanding our tool set, expanding our skills, our experience, expanding our understanding of the fundamentals, and using different methods to apply those fundamentals so that we're sure we've understood them. Because sometimes mastery of a workflow might trick you into thinking that you've mastered the subject. And that's an important distinction to make. It's not mastery of a workflow that we're going for. It's mastery of a subject, and in order to master a subject, we need to attempt to create different versions, different styles, different iterations, you know, progress through iterating. It's kind of the concept art mindset, really. So this creature, again, pretty comfortable with the way it turned out, as you guys might have gathered from the previous videos. One of the things that I pride myself on is probably shape language. I think I'm very good at designing interesting and appealing shapes, so that's one thing that I try to lean in heavily, just making sure that the shape design of the creature was nice and graphic, easily readable, and overall just an appealing shape. And one of the things to keep in mind is when we want to create appealing shapes, it's both like keeping in mind that most of the silhouette in this case needs to be simple, and part of the silhouette is allowed to be complex. You can flip those ratios around, but the important thing is you always need to have a dominant factor in design. Mostly something, partly another thing. In this case, mostly simple, partly complex. Mostly soft, partly sharp, for example. Mostly soft curves, a couple of angles and corners in there to really balance out the shape and turn it into something appealing. Shape design is something as well that in the future I might do a bit more of a coherent tutorial video about, but you know, for now, to get myself into the groove of producing videos on the regular, I'm gonna focus on just having fun with these illustrations, creating content that is hopefully interesting to look at, get you an idea of what it is that I do before I start explaining my methods and techniques. Because again, would kind of be the point of the message that I'm trying to convey in this video, of trying new things, making sure that you have tried new things, knowing when to try new things and maybe when not to do so. This illustration in particular had a couple challenges. Overall, it didn't take me too long to put this together. I think it went rather well. As you can see, actually we're partly like about 3/4 through the video already. And between now and like 5 minutes ago, probably there wasn't really that much change. And that's because, in my experience, like 80% of the painting, most of the time is done in the first 20% of the process. So in this case, for example, this entire painting took me about, let's say, 2 hours, 2.5. And after 20 minutes, probably, I had actually my illustration in place. Although I was procrastinating on putting the character in. I was mainly focusing on the creature. But it's interesting to realize how much time you should spend on what. And the reason that my illustration actually was already, looking very similar to what it's looking now, so early on in the process, is because we don't want to zoom in on a single subject too quickly. And that's a little mistake that I've made in this process. Now, I don't mind that much. Again, I'm just having fun with this. When you're having fun, don't bother too much about what might be wrong, what might be right. As long as you're enjoying the process and you're enjoying the end result, there's really no fault there. But usually it's a good idea to go throughout your entire painting at the same time. Work through every single piece of the painting so that it's basically appearing gradually as a whole, so that you don't have a rendered face without having any of the rest of the painting finished. When you do that, you'll notice you'll start speeding up, your paintings will look finished faster, and from the moment you have your entire illustration as a base version, at that point you can choose how far you're going to take it, because technically I could spend another 20 hours on this, rendering the textures and the scales and the grains of sand, the clouds, whatever. But in my opinion, there really wouldn't be a point in that. I personally enjoy having these more quote-unquote fast paintings, because 2 hours is actually pretty long for what I usually do. Because I like to see results fast, and I'm personally not impressed by highly polished rendering. As long as the texture is readable, as we understand the materials, I think you've done a good job, and you can do that by hinting at texture rather than actually spending time to render it hyper-realistically, for example. So, again, slowing down to be decisive, to choose which parts of the area to highlight, which part of the painting to highlight, which part of the painting to maybe leave a bit more subtle, a little bit more rough. I think that's a powerful way of hinting at a composition, for example. In this case, obviously the focal point is going to be the face of the creature. That's why that's basically the only area that really has any texture, any scales. The rest of the creature only has hints at texture. I don't need to refine everything, because that's a little bit pointless. People are going to look at the head anyway. The rest of the creature, you're just going to glide through. If I've done my job right, the first thing that will jump out to you is going to be the face of the creature. You'll follow the curve of the reins and the neck downwards into the character, and then afterwards you just kind of float through the image. The tail is also obviously curved in a way that it accentuates the gesture of the creature, adding to the composition. And everything is just very purposefully placed in a certain location so that I don't have to bother with rendering everything out. The clouds I did have a bit of issues with. I liked the idea of the clouds, and I wanted to put multiple clouds down. I wanted to place them specifically behind the head to increase the levels of contrast there, so that that would even more clearly become a focal point. But looking back at things, the first set of clouds are probably actually more interesting. And that's okay. I still like the way it ended up. It's always just good to have a bit of self-reflection about the work that you've done, so that you can always try to improve, But for now, here's my end result. I'm quite fond of this guy. It's nothing too complicated. Again, a comfort zone painting. But it's good to have those. It's good to relax and enjoy the process when you're creating these images. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys would like to see anything else, please let me know. Take care.